Okay, today's topic is about surveys and urban geography. The reading material from the textbook is chapter 12 and chapter 13. Let's first have a brief discussion of three different types of surveys activities. First, let's talk about consumer service activity. These are the activities that basically serve the needs of individual consumers rather than business groups. Now there are four major types here: so retail and wholesale, education, health and social services, and leisure activity such as tourism, hospitality, so on and so forth. In the context of the U.S. economy, almost half of the jobs in the U.S. Job market fall into one of these four categories, and so that's give you a sense of the significance and importance of these several types of consumer service activities, especially in the U.S. economy. Then we'll have a business services that serve the needs of businesses and really facilitate other businesses. So these business services themselves are businesses. At the same time, they serve other uh, businesses such as manufacturing, primary business as well. Okay. And there are three major types of business service activities: professional services, financial services, and transportation logistic services. So these are uh, three business services account for almost a quarter of the employment in the U.S. Okay. And so that is again a very significant part of the U.S. economy. Then we have so-called public services, and basically we are talking about the role of government. And here you're talking about administration, security and protection for citizens and businesses, and administratively you could have a central government at the federal level. You also have the regional, such as the state and local government as well. And in the context of the U.S. economy, these three portions of public services roughly account for 10% of total employment in the job market. Here we need to explain that in this regard we have the police force, you have the government officials, the militaries, is all part of government services. But many states and local, they have public schools. The employees who work for public universities and schools also actually the part of employee working in the service industry, but they are not regarded as a part of public services in these particular statistics. But in other statistics, school teachers and employees at the public universities may be grouped as part of public services because these are the people who are paid by the government at different levels. Okay, just for this particular statistics that we are looking at here, 10%. This 10% does not include the school teachers and employees at the public universities and colleges. And these slides show that in the context of the U.S. economy, what is the trend of a change in employment structure? Over time, we can really get a sense of increasing size of service activities. And you look at the bottom, the blue size slice is very thin, and that is the primary sectors that include agriculture, mining, forest, so on. And this is a very flat, very thin layer, and that means that from the 1970s to present time, the employment in the primary sector is really small. Then you have this second slice, the secondary sector that shows that this construction and manufacturing remain very stable and slight decline in recent decades. Then you see this several segment of service activities, public services, consumer services, and business services. They are exploding, and over time, and especially you can look at this greenish, the consumer services. They grow very rapidly with the need of consumers increase, and that's where the number of employment in serving the needs in those areas is also increased significantly. And same can be said about the business services. The yellowish slides that also increase significantly, especially the professional services. Yeah. And this is a slide that shows the general trend of the economy. That what would you expect? And you look at the green slides, the agriculture that representative of primary sector is over time become very small in size. Then on the other hand, so for the industry, you have this kind of a upside down U-shaped curve. Initially, with the income growth that basically come from industry. When you increase employment in manufacturing, that's why the job will switch from agriculture into industries. People will migrate from the rural areas into cities, and that's when you have a period of time when industry increase in importance in employment and become more significant. And over time, when people have more income to spend, and that is what caused the employment in service sector increase, and therefore industry is still important in terms of the total value of value added they create. But at the same time, people after have income, they begin to enjoy their life. They receive more education, they travel, they have more health care, and therefore they increase their spending in variety of consumer service sector, and that is what caused the increase in employment in those sectors as well. So eventually, the size of the service sector increase and overwhelm on both primary sector and secondary sector. So this is a general trend of a development when we look at the experience of developed countries. So we just project that the similar trend will happen to many other countries, many other developing countries as well. And this is a kind of a slide that shows the change in the employment structure. Is actually this is changing composition of U.S. Output. So far, all the slides we have seen basically reflect the change in the employment. But when you look at value added, we see a similar structure. We see the declining share of agriculture. Then we also see the rise and the fall of industry value added. Then we see a constant rise in the value added of service sector. So that gives us a kind of a very similar profile in terms of a change when we compare the change in the value added with changes in employment structure. And this is a slide that shows what happened to India in terms of GDP. We see kind of a similar structure and rising importance of service and declining importance of agriculture, also somewhat a slight increase in industry. Although, as we discussed before, given Indians' income level, India should have a more significant increase in his industry rather than in service activity at this particular stage of development. So this is a map that shows general patterns in terms of how how much service activity account for total GDP. A clear divide is between more developed countries and less developed countries. In general, 3/4 of the employment of the GDP in developed countries come from service activity, and less than half for LDCs, where service basically was GDP come from. And of course, for many developing countries, this share is actually increasing. And we have seen previously that for some countries, Indians service already more than half, and but this is an abnormal situation. But the general trend is clear that in the process of modernization, this trend that occurring in MDCs will eventually occur in LDCs as well. So one evidence of service become more important can be seen in the importance of service in global trade. So this is a slide that shows over time the international trade also contain increasingly larger share that come from trade in service activities. So that's we can really see from this slide.